Before we begin, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from tonight? Drop it in the comments below. I love seeing our little community connected across so many towns, cities, even countries. It reminds me that no matter how different our lives are, we often share the same feelings, the same questions. Now let me take you into a night I never thought would stay so vividly in my memory. A night when something shifted in the stillness of a small hotel room. My name is Eleanor. I'm 73 years old. And I've never believed age was a wall that stops us. To me, it's just a number. We don't stop learning, growing, of being surprised by life sometimes when we least expect it. This story unfolded last spring. My husband Henry was away on one of his veterans retreats, something he does every year. Usually I stay behind, but that time things turned out differently. My grandson Daniel, who's 28, had invited me to join him on a short work trip to a quiet, coastal town a few hours from home. He had business during the day, while I could enjoy a change of scenery, something to gently shake me out of my routine. Honestly, it sounded like a gift. We checked into this modest little hotel, soft yellow walls, just a hint of too much air freshener. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm. The staff were kind, and the hush of the place felt comforting in a way I didn't realize I needed. We only booked one room with 2 beds. That didn't bother me. I'm not hard to please, and Daniel has always been respectful, thoughtful. We've been close since he was a boy. I helped raise him while my daughter worked long shifts. He's always had this calm, steady energy that makes me feel safe, even when I don't know I need it. That first night, after we'd had a simple dinner at a little seafood shack by the water, we returned to the hotel, tired from the drive. The room smelled faintly of ocean air and fresh linen. The lamp between the beds cast a soft golden glow. We each slipped under our blankets, in silence, a silence that felt companionable, not empty. I lay there, staring up at the ceiling fan, listening to the steady whir of its blades. Something felt different. Not bad, just still, as if the night itself was holding its breath. "You okay, Grandma?" Daniel's voice came gently from the other bed. I smiled into the dark. "Yeah, I'm fine, just can't sleep," he chuckled softly. "Same. Maybe too much coffee at dinner." I turned on my side to face him, though I could barely see his outline. "Do you ever feel like time speeds up the older you get?" He paused, then said, "Yeah, I think about that a lot. Feels like I blinked, and my 20s are almost gone." I reached for the lampchain and pulled it. The room dimmed, leaving only the faint stripes of moonlight falling across the floor. "When I was your age," I whispered, "I thought I had life all figured out. Marriage, family plans for the future. But life, it's full of surprises." He didn't answer right away. That was something I loved about him, how he listened fully without rushing. "I've been thinking about you a lot lately," I admitted. My voice was low, almost hesitant. "You've grown into such a thoughtful man. Kind, steady. Your mother would be proud." "Thanks," he said quietly. "That means a lot coming from you." We let the silence settle again. But it wasn't empty silence. It was thick alive, with memory, with everything unspoken between us. A soft rumble of thunder rolled somewhere in the distance. I hadn't realized rain was coming, but it felt fitting. Nights like that always carry something extra, a hum in the air you can't quite name. "Can I ask you something?" Daniel said. "Of course. Do you ever feel lonely? Even when you're not alone?" The question struck me deeper than I expected. "Yes," I whispered. "More than I admit to anyone." He shifted in his bed, then sat up. His silhouette moved against the curtains, a little brighter in the moonlight. "I guess. I've always felt closest to you," he said. "You've been more of a mother to me than anyone else." I never said that out loud before. I sat up too, wrapping the blanket tighter around my shoulders. My heart beat faster. "You don't need to say it," I told him softly. "I've always known." The room felt smaller somehow, not in a suffocating way, more like the walls themselves were listening, holding the quiet between us. Daniel rose from his bed and walked over to the window. Outside rain tapped gently against the glass, weaving soft trails of silver down its surface. "You've always understood me," he said quietly, his gaze fixed on the night beyond the pain. I stood too, moving softly, until I was beside him. The glow of passing headlights carved brief moving shadows across the glass, and for a moment, it felt like the world had slowed down just for us. "You're easy to understand," I told him. "You just don't let many people try." At that, he finally turned his head toward me. His eyes held something, not sadness, not longing, but tenderness. "Gratitude. You're the only person I feel real around," he said. "With you, I don't have to pretend." A warmth spread through me. Not awkward, not misplaced, but a gentle recognition. A reminder that connection, deep human connection, can sometimes exist beyond roles, beyond titles. I reached out and laid my hand on his arm. "You never have to pretend with me," I whispered. We stood there, just listening to the rain, wrapped in silence that wasn't empty but alive. Nothing more happened that night. And yet, something shifted. Something subtle but important. The next morning, the storm had passed. The pavement outside shimmered with leftover rain beneath the rising sun. I pulled the curtains open slowly, letting golden light fill the room. Daniel was still asleep, turned on his side, peaceful. For a fleeting moment, I saw not the man he had become, but the little boy I used to read bedtime stories to. The years between us suddenly felt lighter, less sharp. I dressed quietly and slipped downstairs to the hotel cafe. The smell of fresh coffee and toasted bread wrapped around me like an old friend. I settled by the window, porcelain cup, warming my hands, but my thoughts kept drifting back to the night before. Not because of scandal or anything dramatic, but because of the intensity of feeling seen. The way he looked at me, the way words had hung in the air like something sacred. When Daniel joined me a little later, his familiar gentle smile softened the room. "Sleep okay?" I asked. He nodded, rubbing his eyes. "Yeah, talking like that." It helped. He stirred his coffee, watching the cream swirl into small galaxies. "I don't usually open up like that. Not with many people." I know, I said softly. That's why it mattered. We didn't speak much more, but there was a new stillness between us, a closeness. Not heavy, just softer, like a thread had been quietly tied between us. After breakfast, we strolled slowly along the marina. The sun warmed our backs, while the boards rocked gently in their slips. ropes creaking with the tide. The breeze carried the briny scent of seawater and seagrass. As we walked, Daniel told me about his work. The constant pressure, the weight of deadlines, the loneliness that hides beneath, always having to be the strong one. You'd think by now I'd have someone, he admitted. A partner. Someone to share this with. I glanced at him, feeling the honesty in his words. You have more time than you think, I said gently. And besides, not everyone finds love the traditional way. He looked at me curiously, almost searching. You really believe that? I smiled, turning my face into the breeze. I've lived long enough to know love doesn't follow rules. It arrives how it wants. Sometimes where you least expect it. And to those of you listening right now, do you believe that? Do you think love has its own timing, or do you think we make it happen? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. There was a thoughtful kind of silence as we walked. I noticed the way Daniel's fingers twitched at his side, almost like he wanted to reach out, but stopped himself. I didn't either. Not yet. We were both still trying to understand this new closeness, what it meant, where it belonged. Back at the hotel, the afternoon stretched quietly before us. I sat on the edge of my bed with a book in hand, while Daniel lay back with one arm resting over his forehead. Eyes closed, but voice awake. Tell me something about your past, he said suddenly. Something no one else knows. I looked up surprised. Why? His lips curled into a small smile, though his eyes remained shut. Because I want to know all of you, not just the grandmother version. That sentence pierced deeper than he could have imagined. I set the book down slowly. All right, I said, steadying my voice. When I was 21, I almost ran away to Paris with a man I'd only known for a week. He was wild, unpredictable. And I think back then, I just wanted to escape myself. Daniel opened one eye, curious. What stopped you? I thought for a moment. I realized I didn't need to become someone else. I just needed to be seen. But it took me years to truly understand that. He opened both eyes, then locking his gaze with mine. I see you, Eleanor. Not as a title, not as a role. Just you. My breath caught, not in shock, but in a warmth I hadn't felt in so long. Something inside me, a part that had been quiet for years, stirred awake. That evening, we stayed in, ordered a light dinner, listened to the rain return in soft, steady sheets against the window. The television flickered faintly in the background, but neither of us were paying attention. At one point, Daniel rose to fetch water from the little kitchenette. The lamp above cast his features in a softer light, making him look older, more thoughtful. When he turned back, something lingered in his eyes. You always wear your hair the same, he remarked. I laughed, shaking my head. Habit. Why? No reason, he said, handing me the glass. I like it. It's very you. He sat on the edge of my bed for a moment, the mattress dipping beneath his weight. Our shoulders brushed just enough to send a quiet ripple through me. I'm glad you came with me, he said, voice low. I didn't realize how much I needed this. I looked at him, feeling the truth of his words settle inside me. Neither did I. Sometimes we don't know what we're missing until it's sitting right beside us. For a moment, time stopped. His eyes met mine, not demanding, not questioning, simply present. It was a gravity all its own, the kind of connection you can't plan, for the kind that grows in stillness. Neither of us moved. Neither of us looked away. Something unspoken passed between us, quiet and profound, as if two lives had recognized they were part of the same story, even if the world would never understand the chapters. We turned back to the screen, eventually pretending to watch, but our minds were elsewhere. We were listening to something deeper, something unfolding wordlessly. The next morning, I woke before the sun. The room was wrapped in dark blue stillness, the kind of early hour that feels honest in its quiet. I sat up and let my gaze fall on Daniel, sleeping soundly across the room. His chest rose and fell in an easy rhythm, and I found myself watching far longer than I meant to. There was something in that moment, like standing at the edge of a truth I hadn't yet dared to name. A warmth, a longing, something undefined but undeniable. When Daniel stirred awake, he caught me looking. He smiled, not groggy, not forced, but soft. Familiar. "Morning," he said. "Good morning," I answered, keeping my tone light. We moved through the motions of getting ready. He had a late breakfast meeting with some local business partners. While I said I'd stay back, maybe walk along the water, he paused at the door before leaving, as though he wanted to add something more. But instead he simply smiled again and said, "See you in a bit." The door clicked shut behind him and I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. For a long time I just stood at the window, watching cars drift by on the damp street below. And to you watching this right now, have you ever had a moment like that? Where words weren't spoken, but you still knew something important was shifting inside you? If you have, tell me in the comments. I'd love to know. People were going about their lives as if nothing had changed. But I was different. Something had opened inside me, something I hadn't expected, and I needed time to understand it. That afternoon, I walked alone to the marina, letting the salty breeze play through my hair. I found a bench with a view of the endless water and let my thoughts drift. I thought about my life, about Henry, about the decades of quiet, steady love, and about the loneliness that had slowly crept in like a fog. I loved my husband in the deep, enduring way that long marriages allow. But parts of me had been asleep for so long, I'd almost forgotten they existed. And now, here they were, awake. Later that evening, Daniel returned to the room. He looked tired, yet somehow lighter, as if the day had been shedding weight off his shoulders. He kicked off his shoes and dropped onto the bed with a soft sigh. "How was your day?" he asked, eyes closed. "Peaceful," I said. "Thoughtful." He smiled without opening his eyes. Same. For a while we sat together in that easy, companionable silence. Then he sat up abruptly. "Can we talk about last night?" A small jolt went through my chest. "Of course." He turned toward me, serious but calm. "I've been thinking about it all day. Not in a strange way. I just felt something. Like we crossed a line, but not a bad one. More like we stepped into a space we'd both been avoiding." I nodded slowly. I felt it too. It wasn't just a conversation, he continued. It was something else. Something I've never felt before. not with anyone. His words weren't reckless. They were careful, respectful, and that's why they landed so deeply. Neither have I admitted. He looked at me with that same gentle tenderness, the kind that listens even when no one is speaking. I know how it sounds, he said quietly, and I know how the world would see it. But this, whatever this is, it feels real, safe, honest. A lump rose in my throat. Not from shame, not from confusion, but from the simple relief of being understood. I don't want to overstep, he added. I just needed to tell you. I reached out and took his hand gently, carefully. You didn't overstep, Daniel. You just spoke what I've been feeling too. He exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding his breath for hours. So, what do we do with this? He asked. I didn't answer immediately. I looked down at our hands, mine wrinkled, his strong and warm, and thought about how rare a connection like this was. Not forbidden, not scandalous, just unexpected and undeniable. I think we give it space, I said finally. Let it be what it is without forcing it into a shape it doesn't fit. We don't need to define it. We just need to be honest and kind. His fingers curled slightly around mine. I can do that. I want to. That night, we didn't pretend anymore. We sat side by side on the bed, watching a movie we barely noticed. Our shoulders touched. Our hands stayed clasped. No rush, no agenda, just presence. When it came time for sleep, he looked at me. Would it be strange if I stayed here in this bed, just asleep? I understood. He didn't want anything more than closeness. The comfort of not feeling alone. No, I said softly. It wouldn't be strange. So we climbed under the covers together, initially back to back, like two people learning a new language. Eventually his hand found mine again. And this time, I didn't pull away. The silence between us was heavy with questions, with understanding, with a connection neither of us could put into words. And in that room, under the soft lamplight and the steady hum of the heater, I felt more alive than I had in years. Not because of romance, not because rules were bent, not because any boundaries were crossed, but because someone had truly seen me, all of me. And I had allowed it. Morning sunlight filtered softly through the beige curtains, warming the edges of the bed. Before I even opened my eyes, I was still lying beside Daniel, though now a few respectful inches separated us. Our bodies were angled slightly toward one another, like two people who had reached the end of a long conversation and were content to linger in the silence that followed. I blinked my eyes open first. For a moment, I forgot where I was. There was no husband in the next room, no daily routines demanding attention. Just me, my thoughts, and the quiet rhythm of Daniel's breathing beside me. I turned my head and looked at him. His face was relaxed, serene even. He looked younger somehow, as if he had shed some invisible weight in his sleep. And strangely, I felt the same. When he stirred, his eyes met mine instantly. No surprise, no awkwardness, just an unspoken acknowledgement of what had passed between us. Morning, he said softly. Good morning, I replied, voice calm but full of something tender. We stayed there for a while longer before he slowly sat up and stretched. I think that might have been the best sleep I've had in months, he said. I smiled. Same here. We moved quietly about the room, packing our things. It was checkout day, the weekend having passed faster than I expected. Yet somehow, we had lived a year's worth of experiences in those 2 nights. Every movement was gentle, thoughtful. There were no big declarations. No need to label what had happened. Instead, everything carried a quiet grace, like we had gone through something rare together. I've been thinking, Daniel said, as he zipped his duffel bag, about how we move forward from this, how we carry it. I looked up from my suitcase. Me too, he said. I don't want to lose what we found, but I know life isn't simple. We go back home, back to everything we left behind. But I want to keep this honesty, this closeness alive. I nodded. We will. Because it's real. And because we both know the difference between something fleeting and something that matters. He smiled, and in that moment, I saw a flash of the boy he used to be, vulnerable, open, trusting. I felt proud, not just of him, but of the space we had created together, a space where we could be fully ourselves, without masks, without fear. The drive home was quiet, soft music, playing from the radio, the road, stretching empty and long ahead of us. At one point, Daniel reached over and gently placed his hand over mine, resting it on the center console. I didn't speak. I simply turned my hand over, holding his. Silence was enough. It was already full with memory, understanding, and something lasting. When we arrived at my house, a strange ache filled my chest. Not regret, not sadness, but the realization that something beautiful had shifted and would continue to evolve. We had stepped into a new chapter of our relationship, and though it would take a different shape, once the world intruded again, it would remain quiet, enduring real. Daniel turned off the engine and looked at me. Are you okay? I smiled, brushing a strand of hair behind his ear as I had when he was a boy. More than okay. He leaned in, kissing my forehead, gently, his hand still holding mine. Thank you for everything, for coming, for seeing me, I whispered, for reminding me that I'm still here, that parts of me I thought were lost were just waiting to be remembered. He helped me with my bags, then drove off his car, shrinking down the road. I stepped inside my home and everything appeared unchanged. The photos on the mantel, the cushions on the couch, the ticking of the old wall clock. Yet I was different. I walked through the quiet house, touched familiar surfaces, the kitchen counter, the edges of worn furniture, and felt them differently, as if they were meeting me for the first time again. That evening, I made a cup of tea and settled into my favorite chair by the window. The sky glowed with streaks of orange and lavender, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel alone, because inside me had been rekindled something quiet, profound, a truth, a connection that didn't obey rules or expectations. It was about seeing and being seen, about choosing presence over pretense. And though life would continue its steady, unrelenting pace, I knew I would never forget that hotel room, that rainy night, the soft breath of something new between us. It had changed me forever. To all of you watching this, have you ever felt seen in a way? that changed the way you see yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories.